Okay, so the next part, let me play through the whole thing one more time, and then you'll see where the next part is. So it's... Okay, so that next part, after it goes down from the to the C chord to the 7th on the 8th fret of the D string, it bounces off those two notes, the 7th fret of the G string to the 8th fret of the D string, but I think I already said that. Then it goes back up, so it's going back to the 7th fret of the G string to the 6th fret of the B string. Then it does this little hammer-on thing where it's the 6th fret of the G string to the 7th fret of the G string. And it goes back up to that 8th fret of the B string. And now those two notes are played together on the piano. Right? So you have... and then the second time it does that, so it goes... so those two notes are ringed together. Then you do it again. So you're playing both the 6th fret and the 6th fret on the G and B string. And then you hammer on to that 7th fret of the G string. And then you play the 8th fret of the D string. So that whole thing is... then it goes down to the 5th fret of the G string. Then it goes... then it rolls to the 5th fret of the D string, goes to the 3rd fret of the D string, 5th fret of the D string, so, and then the 3rd fret of the G string. So then it plays kind of a chord, and I think there's more notes in the chord that he plays. It's really in a low register, but on guitar it sounds great if you just play a little 5th there. So you play the F on the E string, 1st fret, and you play the C on the A string, 3rd fret. And it's just kind of a little punch. So the whole thing is... Now there's certain rhythmic values of these notes that there's, you know, it's pulling back, it's playing behind the beat a little bit, and then it's holding out certain notes. And I'll try and get this in notation, but again, if you can listen to it one more time and hear that, kind of feel the groove of it, it's not just... right? So if we have a rhythm somewhat like this... right? So it's you could hear those little like rhythmic variations. We'll like I said, I'll try and transcribe this so you can see the rhythmic notations. You know, there are some notes that kind of pull back, and you're doing 8th note. Well, actually, it's really quick. This thing is all 16th notes. It's so fast. The tempo is really fast. And it's kind of challenging to get that phrasing in there because you're just kind of flying through these notes. But if you could slow it down and hear that phrasing and then maybe practice that, it'll help your rhythmic timing and your own solos. But anyway, so let's get into the next part. The next part basically goes... And what that is, and again, at this point we're playing all over C minor. So all this stuff... if you see that chord there, right? It's all within pentatonic scale stuff, right? Except for that note, of course, and that's just playing your 9th. So it's pretty much C minor pentatonic with a 9th in there. Now this part is the 10th fret on the G string. Then you go up an octave to the F note on the E string on the 13th fret, and then you play the 10th fret on the E string. So, and then you walk down an arpeggio. So the 11th fret on the B string to the 12th fret of the G string. So, and then you just go alternate notes in a chord scale. I mean in a scale. So you have the 10th fret on the B string to the 13th fret to the 11th fret, all on the B string. So that whole thing is. So then it goes to this kind of cool, it goes up another arpeggio, which you could think of this as, think of it as B flat major, right? So it's the 10th fret of the G string to the 11th fret of the B string to the 10th fret of the E string. Then it does this little double stop thing, and it's kind of a cool little slide on guitar that you can do. So you're playing those two last notes that you just played, the 11th fret on the B string to the 10th fret on the E string, but you're playing them together. So after you go, you play the two of those together. So all single notes, then double stop. And then you slide that up. And the cool thing about that is you're not just sliding it all up equally. You're sliding the top finger on the E string up a half a step. So from 10 to 11. And then that bottom note on the B string, the 11th fret, you're sliding up a whole step to the 13th fret. So from 11 to 13. So you have this. And then you slide it right down. It's kind of a cool little slide. You really have to separate your fingers there. So basically you're getting a major third and a minor third. So you're just diatonically going up the scale. So then you hit that B string 11th fret again. So then you go back down to the G string on the 10th fret, and you go down to the 7th fret on the G string. And then you go down the 8th fret on both the D and A string. So the whole thing is. Right? Now he throws in a chord right after that. And what you're doing here, you're just literally going down the rest of that B flat major arpeggio, right? But then right after he hits that note, he throws in this chord stab. And on piano, I think he's playing octaves, but I think he kind of rolls over on the key. So instead of playing both of these E flat notes, instead of playing both the E flat notes, he's sort of playing the D note and an E flat note. So you get this dissonance, but it's very light. So I think he's playing two E flat notes and then sort of playing that D note. So, but I think it's great on guitar to just, because it's a real quick stab. So you get that dissonance of the D note on the 12th fret of the D string, and then the E flat note on the G string, 8th fret. So that whole thing is. Right? Then it goes into a really cool section where it's phrasing. Again, this is still all over a C minor chord. He's doing this phrase that's it's the same exact thing but offset in time. And you'll just have to listen to the recording to get it. But that's the first part of the phrase. The second part is. And the second time, again, it doesn't just go, so. Right? It's not very, the timing is. So he waits an extra beat, and so he offsets that phrase. It's just a really cool thing because you're expecting it to come right on that beat, but he kind of holds it. So the phrase is the 14th fret of the G string to the 15th fret of the E string to the 11th fret on the E string. So back to the 15th fret on the B string to the 12th and 15th fret on the G string. Then the 15, 13 on the B string. So then it goes up this thing where, and that's the 12th fret, 13th fret on the D string, and 12th fret, 14th fret on the G string. So then when he does that again, he does the same, but this time he does and goes right to that note instead of going. He goes 12th fret, 13th fret on the D string, then right to the 13th fret of the G string. Then he walks down a scale. So he's going 13, 12, 13, 12, 10 on the G string. And then he goes to the, again, I'm saying he goes to these frets, but he's playing the piano, of course. So from the 10th fret of the G string to the 13th fret of the D string. And then he goes back 12, 10 on the G string. So then he just walks down a scale, which is skipping some notes in the scale. 13th fret to 10th fret on the D string, going down to the 13th fret of the A string. So that whole phrase is. Then it pauses for a second, right when he hits that note, instead of just going this next part where it's just the 10th fret to the 13th fret back to the 10th fret on the D string, he pauses right before he does that. So it's a cool little breakup again. You'll hear in that solo if you really take time to listen to the rhythmic values of these notes. So after he does that, so he goes up an arpeggio, right? So he's going from the 15th fret of the A string, 13th fret of the D string, 12th fret of the G string, to the 13th fret of the G string. So then he rolls over to the 13th fret of the B string. You go to the 11th fret of the E string, 15th fret of the E string, slide up to the 16th fret of the E string. So you have, and then it goes up to, what's that, the 22nd fret? Yeah. So you have, now the next part of the phrase, it continues going up the piano. Of course, I don't have those frets, so we lower it down an octave. And this is kind of a technique in transcribing piano that I think I was talking about in the beginning. Maybe I didn't mention it, but when you're transcribing this stuff, since the register goes so much higher, you have to figure out a point to go back down an octave. And you try and do it in a way where it's kind of slick, and this was kind of the perfect point to go back an octave. And then actually there's another part where he goes up even another octave. So now we're 2 octaves different. So you have to kind of shift it back again, and we'll get into that in a second.